Hi guys, today we're going to take a look at the Olympus OM10 FC. This is a way cool camera. I probably shouldn't watch too much Japan vintage camera YouTube videos because he got me interested in this thing. But it is really neat in several ways. First of all, it's called an FC because when you ordered this particular OM10 with the optional manual control, then the manual control was put on and the package was called an FC. If you ordered an OM10 without the manual control, then it was just called an OM10. So it was just a packaging thing. The interesting thing is that the manual control option, which is labeled FC right on the front, if you bought a regular OM10 and then optionally added the manual control, it wouldn't be labeled FC, it would be labeled manual control. How cool is that? At any rate, it's a real neat camera. Basically, it's an aperture priority camera, fully automatic. If you order it, as most people did, without the optional manual control, then it's always aperture priority, and instead of a speed dial on the top, what you would do is just set the ISO, leave it on auto, and take pictures. This cost me $50 on eBay. Plus shipping. It ended up $75 with $25 shipping. The value on eBay for these is about $100 plus shipping. This one is in excellent condition. I would call it almost mint condition. The really significant part of this camera, which most people overlook, is its ability to take really great long night exposures. And that's because it uses an electronic shutter. And it's much like the famous Yashica Electro 35. You can go out at night, put it on a tripod, press the shutter button, and sometime later it'll set the shutter and your film will be properly exposed. And that's hard to do with film. Let's take a closer look. These were made from 1979 to 1987. And to my knowledge, it's the only 35mm single lens reflex that had an optional manual adapter. You could order it with removable film backs with a data recorder back, which would set the time and date in there. And also you could order it with these, or order extra power winders for it. And I obtained this power winder separately on eBay for $5 plus shipping. So let's take a closer look at this camera. On the camera front, this little switch up here has nothing to do with selfies or self-timers. It's a switch to allow you to rewind the film. Instead of a button on the back, you flip this little lever over to rewind the film. This mechanism, which is difficult to see here in the dark, I'll shine extra light on it, is where you get the light for the self-timer light. And of course, this little piece on the right is the manual adapter, which is just in a little socket. You can pull it right off. That's the manual adapter. If you didn't have that, then you would just have this fully automatic camera. On the top, we have the film rewind with a little flip-out lever and a plastic knob. And to open the back, you would pull it up and it would open the back up. To the right of that, we have the power switch. Now, it doesn't really power the camera so much as it just powers the sensor and the electronic shutter. So, if you turn it on, then the sensor and everything is turned on and you'll take meter readings through the viewfinder. If you press it all the way forward, it's a battery check and it beeps. I'm not sure you can hear that, so I'll hold it up closer to the camera so it'll pick up the sound. That probably messed up my focus for the next 5 minutes, but we'll see. And of course there's the off position. And it turns out if you don't turn it off, it's no big deal, it turns itself off. But it does a little trick and it leaves a little tricky power. So if it's off and you press the shutter button, it will sort of instantly turn it on, take the picture, and turn it off, which is pretty neat. And then all the way back here is the self-timer, and you can push it all the way over if you want. And when you're in self-timer mode, if you take a picture, you'll see the self-timer light flashing, and it goes for quite a while. I think it says 10 or 12 seconds. Alright, then of course we have a hot shoe, and if you have the flash that came with this camera, it actually has the ability to do auto flash synchronization and turn the flash off like an auto flash at the right shutter speed. Now over here we have the ISO selector. You can lift this up and turn it to select any different ISO. I have it set on 1000. On the right you have an indicator for auto, and there's a little lever here on the side which is kind of hard to get at, and that would switch you to manual adapter, auto, or bulb mode. And of course bulb mode would leave the shutter open until you let go. Oh, I still have the self-timer on. Let me do that again. Bulb mode would leave the shutter open until you let go. So you could do your own timing. The shutter release is threaded for a standard release socket, and of course that's the shutter advance lever. Now since we're on the top, the motor winder, if you get this optional winder too, that's the shutter release for that, and there's a little socket there so you can have an electronic release for the motor winder, so you could have the camera mounted remotely and fire it remotely with a wire. Here's the camera back. On the back we just have the viewfinder, and by the way, it's a wonderful viewfinder. The focusing mechanism in there is very good. Let me just pop that open, and there you see the inside of it. Okay, and then on the bottom of the camera, of course, we have this optional power winder, which Olympus calls the winder 2. It just has this big knob to release it. So on the bottom of the camera, here's where you keep your batteries. They're standard LR44s, 2 of them stacked up. That's the tripod socket. This is a electrical connectors for the power winder, and that's the mechanical drive for the power winder. So the bottom of the power winder, of course, has this 1/4-20 thread, the drive connector, a couple of other switches that I don't know what they all do. That's for tightening it on. So to put it on, we just line it up and screw it on. It's got a switch on the bottom which you have to lift up and turn. So right now we'll put it in single mode or in automatic. If we press the regular button, it just takes pictures and you use the manual advance. But if you press the little button, the shutter release on the front of the winder, it uses the power winder. And let me speed things, well, let me show you how it takes time. If you were out late at night and you took a picture with this thing and it's dark, I'll put my hand over the viewfinder, or over the lens. If we take a picture, it's not going to close the shutter until it sees enough light. How cool is that? Now if we put this power winder in sequence mode, then we can do 2.5 frames a second. And that's kind of slow because I have a slow ISO and it's not that bright in the room. So let me turn the shutter speed, or the ISO, up to 1000, and let me go, well, we're still in auto mode, so we'll try it again. Oops, wrong button. That's your wonderful sound, 2.5 frames per second. When it gets to the maximum exposure setting, like 36 or 24, then it will lock up and not take pictures anymore. Now, if we go to manual, I have to move this little lever over to the manual setting. So here's a 1-second exposure with the motor winder. Here would be a 1/2 second. 1/4 of a second, 1/8 of a second, and so on. And we'll crank it all the way up to 1/1000th of a second. And again, if we do it with the motor winder, that's as fast as it can go, 2.5 frames a second. Pretty cool. Now the back of this motor winder is kind of cool. These two connectors here are for the big cartridge film adapter that can hold 256 or 250 frames of 35mm film. It mounts on the back. It gets its electrical signals there to the power winder, and also on the bottom of the power winder there's a hole where you can plug in an optional power adapter, so you can drive this from external power, and they sell a remote battery pack with cables, but you can also do an AC adapter as long as you have the right plugs in there, and the manual tells you all about that. That is one way cool camera. Now you'll notice to remove the lens, there's a lever here on the side, so you just do that and the lens comes off. And again, like any lens, you just align the red dots with the red dots, put it in. Easier said than done, huh? I gotta find the red dot and snap it in. It doesn't have a depth of field preview. In order to do the depth of field preview, you actually have to change your f-stop down to see it and then change it back again. There's no coupling between the aperture ring and the electronic shutter release, so it always meters straight through whatever you have setting on the dial. But still, all in all, it's a way cool camera. They sold millions of these. It was released along the same times as the OM1 and the OM2, which were the professional versions. This was considered the enthusiast camera because it was cheaper. But if you added the manual adapter, it was the moral equivalent of an OM1 or an OM2, just at a much lower reduced price. It's not as heavy as an OM1 or OM2. There's more plastic in it, and so it gets a reputation as not being as durable, but if you don't drop it, it's a wonderful camera, will last many years, as this one did. Well, that's it, guys. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video.